He was the vampire dad who looked like a Calvin Klein ad come to life. Icy blonde, perfectly pressed, and glowing with that weird immortal doctor chic that made half the fandom wonder if they were suddenly into middle-aged men. Peter Facinelli didn't just play Carlisle Cullen in Twilight. He embodied him. Unnaturally symmetrical, eerily calm, and somehow hotter in a lab coat than any 400-year-old undead patriarch had a right to be. For a moment in time, he was everywhere. Red carpets, fan conventions, teen magazines, Tumblr fan cams where he got edited like he was the third Hemsworth brother that no one talks about. Facinelli was the quiet storm of the Twilight universe. Not screaming for attention like Robert Pattinson or setting off teen girl heart monitors like Taylor Lautner. No, Peter was the one who smouldered from the shadows. And the internet noticed. There were Dr. Cullen Daddy t-shirts, Wattpad fics that did not keep things PG, entire Twitter threads thirsting over the fact that he made Pale look hot. He had that weird, rare quality that made him seem expensive, even if you couldn't name 5 other roles he'd ever been in. But here's the thing. While Peter Facinelli's face was suddenly etched into pop culture's collective memory, his name never quite was. Even at the height of Twilight mania, he wasn't getting movie deals thrown at him like the rest of the cast. He wasn't landing Marvel roles or Dior campaigns. Instead, he was stuck in this odd, glittery limbo, too famous to go back to obscurity, but not famous enough to break into Hollywood's A-list. And that's when people started asking, wait, who is this guy? Because here's the gag. Twilight didn't make Peter Facinelli. It just put him back in front of a camera big enough for people to finally notice. The truth? Peter had already been in the business for over a decade before he ever put on that pale foundation and golden contacts. He'd done TV, teen comedies, crime dramas, rom-coms, even tried to be an action star once. The man worked, but no matter how many times he popped up on screen, it was like Hollywood just kept forgetting he existed. Twilight changed that. Briefly, for the first time in his career, he was part of a global phenomenon. He had fans, he had paparazzi, he had his name on merch, and he had millions of viewers wondering why they were suddenly crushing on the dad in a teen vampire soap opera. But even as the spotlight warmed his face, it never quite settled. Peter Facinelli wasn't Robert Pattinson. He wasn't Kristen Stewart. He wasn't even Anna Kendrick. He was the hot doctor dad, a vibe, a mood, a fantasy, not a headliner. And unfortunately for Peter, Hollywood doesn't always reward a vibe. So what happened next? How did Peter go from being Twilight's resident vampire zaddy to, well, whatever he is now? Where did he come from? What roles did he blow? Why didn't his career explode post-Twilight the way literally everyone else's did? And is he bitter about it? Oh, and don't worry. We'll also get into the marriage, the divorce, the career flops, and whether he actually got richer after Twilight, or just better at looking expensive. This is the rise and fade of Peter Facinelli. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how close he came to breaking out and why Hollywood quietly closed the door on Dr. Cullen. Long before he was draining deer in the forest with golden eyes and an emotional support scarf, Peter Facinelli was doing what a lot of good-looking guys from Queens do, trying to get famous, and he wasn't half bad at it. Born in 1973 to Italian immigrant parents, Peter was raised in Ozone Park, New York. Not exactly the launchpad of Hollywood dreams, but he had ambition. The drama club kind. He studied at NYU and trained seriously at the Atlantic Theatre Company, alongside names like Felicity Huffman and William H. Macy. So yes, the man had chops. He wasn't just another pretty face with a gelled swoop and a six-pack. But in the late 90s and early 2000s, Hollywood wasn't looking for chops. It was looking for the next Freddie Prinze Jr., the next Paul Walker, the next white guy who could play a high school senior until age 34 without raising eyebrows. And that's exactly where Peter slotted in. He was cast in Can't Hardly Wait, a chaotic Y2K party movie that turned nobodies into cult icons. Not Peter, though. Not quite. He played a bro in Supernova, which flopped, a high school bad boy in The Big Kahuna, which nobody saw, and a hot priest in Riding in Cars with Boys, opposite Drew Barrymore. And for a brief second, Hollywood squinted at him and went, wait, Could he be something? The answer was always almost. He had the looks, the charisma, the acting chops, but there was always someone just a little shinier, a little edgier, a little more marketable. Ryan Philippe, Josh Hartnett, James Marsden, even Skeet Ulrich, yes, Skeet Ulrich, was landing roles Peter wasn't getting. He wasn't untalented. He was just caught in this no-man's land of almost stardom. Too handsome to be taken seriously, too earnest to be edgy, too forgettable to be iconic. So, what did Peter do? He pivoted. Like a lot of late 90s actors who weren't cracking the A-list, he went to TV, back when that was considered a downgrade. In 2002, he starred in Fastlane, a flashy, hyper-edited cop show where he played a cool undercover agent. It had cars, guns, explosions, and the most aggressively early 2000s editing you've ever seen. It was hot, it was dumb, and it was cancelled after one season. Strike two. Peter kept working, kept showing up, kept being solid, but he wasn't breaking through. Then came the marriage to Jenny Garth. Yes, that Jenny Garth from Beverly Hills 90210. They met on the set of a TV movie and quickly became a tabloid fixture, the beautiful, wholesome couple with matching cheekbones and 3 adorable daughters. It should have helped his star rise. It didn't. If anything, people started seeing him as Mr. Jenny Garth, not exactly the breakout brand he was going for. But Peter wasn't done yet. In 2007, he starred in a little-seen indie drama called The Scorpion 2: Rise of a Warrior. No, we're not kidding. And yes, that was a direct-to-DVD sequel to a Dwayne Johnson spin-off from a Brendan Fraser movie. He was hustling, just not upwards. Then, out of nowhere, came the Twilight casting call. Now let's be honest, no one, including Peter, thought Twilight was going to be a big deal. It was a low-budget, tween-focused adaptation of a book about sparkly vampires. It felt niche, corny even. But when they offered him the role of Dr. Carlisle Cullen, he said yes. He dyed his hair blonde, powdered his skin like a porcelain doll, and walked onto a set that would go on to mint 6 stars and nearly $4 billion. Suddenly, the almost famous guy was everywhere. But here's the weird part. Twilight made him globally recognizable, but still not famous. He was the face, not the name, the vibe, not the story, and he knew it. In interviews, Peter was charming, self-aware, and low-key frustrated. He talked openly about being grateful for Twilight, but also feeling stuck. "No one knows my name," he joked once, "but everyone knows who Carlisle is." Yikes. It's a hard truth in Hollywood. You can be seen by millions and still be invisible to the industry. Being Carlisle Cullen gave Peter Facinelli more visibility than he'd ever had, but it didn't open the doors he thought it would. In fact, it may have quietly closed them. Because once the vampire glitter wore off, Peter was left with something no actor ever wants: recognition without relevance. And the next stage of his life, the divorce, the stalled career, the pivot to low-budget thrillers, and a very strange appearance on a reality cooking show, was about to make headlines for all the wrong reasons. You know how some people peak in high school? Well, in Hollywood, that peak often comes wearing coloured contacts and vampire foundation. For Peter Facinelli, that peak was Twilight, a global juggernaut that should have launched him into permanent A-list status. Instead, it trapped him in a weird kind of career purgatory, forever known, never in demand. When Breaking Dawn Part 2 finally hit theaters in 2012, the franchise was officially done. The fangirls had moved on to the Hunger Games. Robert Pattinson was dating FKA Twigs. Kristen Stewart was chain-smoking her way through French art films. Taylor Lautner had vanished into the ether. And Peter Facinelli? He was back at square one. Only this time, he had a household name and nowhere to go with it. Let's be clear, he wasn't washed up. He was still working. But if you looked at his IMDb post-Twilight, it read like a graveyard of near misses and bargain bin thrillers. He popped up in a short-lived NBC series called American Odyssey. Blink and you missed it. He starred in The Damned, a horror movie so forgettable even horror blogs didn't bother to review it. He even tried writing and producing. In 2015, he co-wrote Lucy's, a romantic heist movie that, well, it came and went. Quietly. The audiences who once screamed for Carlisle Cullen were now busy streaming Stranger Things and thirsting after Oscar Isaac. The Twilight era was over, and Peter, he was still cosplaying relevance on the red carpet. But it wasn't just his career that was in flux. In 2013, Peter and Jenny Garth, his wife of 11 years and the mother of his 3 daughters, officially called it quits. It was messy, or at least the tabloids made it messy. Jenny Garth gave a series of interviews that painted her as blindsided. "I spent so much time nurturing our relationship," she said, "but the balance was off." Translation: Peter got famous and grew out of the marriage. And yeah, the optics weren't great. He filed the paperwork. He was the one who moved on first and fast. Within months, he was dating Jamie Alexander, his co-star from Lucy's, who was about a decade younger and looked like a Marvel superhero, which she later was, by the way. Suddenly, Peter was giving interviews about falling in love again, while Jenny was on Dancing with the Stars having a public breakdown. Not ideal. By 2015, Peter and Jamie were engaged. People magazine ran the photos. The headline was hopeful. A fresh start, it said. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The engagement fizzled out quietly 2 years later. No cheating scandal. No big tabloid blowout. Just a PR statement and a few unfollows. Once again, Peter was single, and the spotlight was growing colder. You'd think being a central part of one of the highest-grossing franchises of the 2000s would earn you some clout in Hollywood. But that's not how this town works. Peter had the look, handsome, clean-cut, ageless in that vaguely metrosexual way. But he didn't have the edge. He wasn't a character actor like Paul Dano. He wasn't quirky hot like Adam Driver. And he certainly wasn't rugged enough to play dads in prestige dramas like Kevin Costner or Kyle Chandler. He was still being offered the same roles he'd played 10 years earlier, except now he was too old for them. In 2018, he landed a recurring role on SWAT, a CBS procedural starring Shemar Moore. He played a villain. He was good. He was solid. But it didn't change the game. The industry had moved on. Peter hadn't become a punchline like some of his Twilight co-stars, but he also hadn't become a success story. He was something worse, forgettable. He started showing up at conventions, you know the kind. Hotel ballrooms, autograph booths, fan selfies, Comic-Con side panels, a few $100 per photo, maybe a Q&A if you're lucky. He wasn't embarrassed. In fact, he was charming about it. But it was clear. This wasn't the plan. Now here's where things get interesting. Despite everything, the stalled film career, the failed engagements, the vampire glow-up that didn't glow up enough, Peter Facinelli is still a millionaire, not billionaire. Let's be clear. But as of 2024, his estimated net worth sits comfortably around $8 million, give or take. That's more than respectable for someone who peaked a decade ago. And that number comes from a mix of acting paychecks, producing credits, residuals from Twilight, and a handful of real estate investments. In fact, Peter has owned multiple properties in Los Angeles, including a gorgeous Mediterranean-style home in Los Feliz, which he sold in 2018 for around $2.5 million. So while he may not be starring in Oscar movies, he's also not living in a rental off Sunset Boulevard. And for the record, yes, that net worth puts him above a few serious actors. He's reportedly richer than Zachary Quinto, Aaron Paul, James Van Der Beek, Tobey Maguire's brother Daniel, Macaulay Culkin, Jonathan Taylor-Thomas, Sean Astin and Freddie Prinze Jr. And unlike a lot of his peers, Peter never flamed out publicly. No substance scandals, no arrests, no Instagram lives gone off the rails, just steady, quiet survival. Still, it wasn't the empire he wanted, and Peter knew it. He'd been the face of an iconic franchise, but he wasn't one of the icons. So what does a vampire doctor do when the blood runs dry? He reinvents. Again. Because the story of Peter Facinelli isn't just about fading fame. It's about what happens when you almost make it and still want more. By the late 2010s, Peter Facinelli had quietly accepted what most actors dread admitting out loud. The A-list wasn't calling. The studios weren't pitching him leads. The awards shows had stopped inviting him years ago, and the public, they remembered his face, but not his name. So he did what many fallen stars have done before him. He tried to reinvent. But reinvention in Hollywood doesn't mean a full makeover. It usually just means pivoting hard enough that people forget where you started. Peter started saying yes to everything. Indie thrillers, Christian dramas, Canadian crime series. If the budget was under $5 million and the director had a reel, Peter was reading the script. And to his credit, the man worked. A lot. Between 2017 and 2022, he stacked his IMDb with titles like The Vanished, Hour of Lead, Catch the Bullet, and 13 Minutes. You haven't heard of most of them, and that's the point. These were quiet little projects, often direct-to-streaming, that flew under the radar and into your uncle's Roku queue. But Peter wasn't just acting, he was also producing. In fact, he co-wrote and directed The Vanished, a thriller about two parents searching for their missing daughter at an RV park. It got a modest release and decent user reviews. Nothing groundbreaking, but it proved he could do more than play Dr. Vampire Dad. And behind the scenes, something else was happening. Something that would thrust him back into the gossip cycle, at least for a moment. In 2019, Peter went public with his new girlfriend, Lily Ann Harrison, an actress and the daughter of Gregory Harrison, the former soap star and 80s heartthrob. She was blonde, stunning, nearly 2 decades younger, and looked like she belonged on a CW show. The tabloids were delighted. By 2020, they were engaged. Peter proposed during a beach vacation in Mexico. People magazine ran the story. The photos were glowy and tasteful. She posted a ring selfie with the caption, "By 2019, thanks for the best gift of my life." Fans were surprised, not because Peter had moved on again, but because Lily was relatively unknown. She wasn't a movie star or model. She was a working actress with minor credits and a solid Hollywood pedigree. To some, it felt like a reset, a quieter, less scandal-prone engagement than the last one. And to his credit, Peter looked happy, relaxed, settled. But even as his personal life was stabilizing, the industry still didn't quite know what to do with him. He got close to a reality show deal. There were whispers of a docuseries about his life as a single dad and actor, co-parenting with Jenny Garth while launching a production company. But the project fizzled out before it even reached pilot stage. The networks wanted more drama, more mess. And Peter? He just wasn't messy enough. In 2022, he and Lily welcomed a baby boy, their first child together, his fourth. The announcement was low-key, shared via Instagram. No flashy deals, no exclusive with People or Us Weekly. Just a new chapter, quietly unfolding. And through it all, Peter kept grinding, taking roles in smaller films, attending horror cons, posting polished photo shoots and dad jokes on Instagram. There's a strange kind of dignity in how he's handled the post-Twilight era. No breakdowns, no desperate rebrands, just a slow fade into adult character roles and PTA meetings. But here's the thing. While Peter Facinelli may have slipped out of the spotlight, he's not broke. Not even close. His estimated net worth hovers around $8 million, more than respectable for someone who hasn't led a hit since 2012. And that number? It actually puts him ahead of a few real actors, the ones who get magazine covers and moody prestige dramas but still live paycheck to paycheck. Peter's worth more than Aaron Paul, more than James Van Der Beek, more than Macaulay Culkin before his Home Alone royalties kicked back in. He may not be critically revered, but he's financially fine. What he didn't get in Oscars or Emmys, he made up for in consistency and Twilight residuals. But here's the kicker. Despite all that money, all that survival instinct, all those credits, Peter still hasn't escaped Carlisle Cullen. Every interview, every convention, every fan interaction, it always loops back to the pale blonde patriarch with golden eyes and a quiet moral compass. It's flattering, but it's also a creative coffin. And so, Peter Facinelli exists in a strange little limbo, respected but not revered, recognized but not remembered, not quite famous, not quite forgotten. Peter Facinelli isn't trying to be famous anymore, not in the desperate, click-thirsty PR machine kind of way. Those days, the red carpets, the glossy spreads, the paparazzi lurking outside his driveway, they're gone. And the truth is, he doesn't miss them. Because after all the glitz and scandal and vampire jokes, Peter landed in a place most actors never get to: quiet relevance. Not stardom, not obscurity, just the middle. The calm, oddly dignified middle. He still acts, still directs, still shows up to fan conventions with that clean-cut charm and soft-spoken humility that made millions of moms swoon back in 2008. He signs Twilight posters, takes selfies, tells stories about Rob Pattinson showing up late to set and Kristen Stewart trying not to laugh during intense scenes. And the fans? They still love him for it. But if you zoom out, you'll notice something strange. While nearly every Twilight cast member has made headlines, some for huge successes, Kristen Stewart and her Oscar buzz, others for public implosions, Taylor Lautner fading into domestic TikTok life, Peter just kept working, not loudly, not urgently, just steadily. In 2023, he had a small role in On Fire, an indie thriller inspired by true events. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it earned decent festival buzz. He's also appeared in crime dramas, made-for-streaming thrillers, and yes, even a Hallmark-style romantic mystery or two. He's still Peter, still doing the thing, still somehow looking 10 years younger than he should. Maybe it's the Italian genes. Maybe it's good lighting and a consistent moisturizer. Either way, Carlisle Cullen still walks among us. But if you ask him, and journalists still do, what he wants next, his answer is surprisingly humble. He wants to direct more. He wants to write. He wants to tell small stories with real emotion, and ideally never wear vampire contacts again. He's also talked about mentoring young actors, helping them navigate the toxic maze of early stardom without falling into the usual traps: ego, addiction, burnout, tabloid drama. Because Peter's seen it all, and he knows how fast Hollywood can chew you up and spit you out. What he doesn't want, to be famous just for the sake of it. He said it plainly: fame is a byproduct. It's not the goal. And maybe that's the secret. Peter Facinelli never wanted to be an icon. He wanted to work, to raise his kids, to keep showing up. And against all odds, that's exactly what he's done. Sure, he didn't become the next George Clooney. He never landed the Marvel call. He never headlined a critically acclaimed HBO series, but he also never crashed. Never flamed out. Never became a sad punchline or a cautionary tale whispered about in casting offices. He just lasted. In a town that spits people out by 30, where one flop can end a career and one scandal can destroy a legacy, Peter Facinelli quietly built a second act on his own terms. He found love again. He had another kid. He made movies you probably skipped past on Netflix, but someone watched, someone liked, someone remembered. And sometimes that's enough. In the end, Peter Facinelli may not be the most famous actor from Twilight. He may not be the richest or the most critically acclaimed, but he might just be the most at peace. Because when the spotlight dims and the fandoms move on, and the vampire craze finally goes cold, what's left? For Peter Facinelli, it's a life, a real one. And in Hollywood, that might be the rarest happy ending of all.